Deniz, welcome back to Australia. You've just returned from a tour of Spain with the Soul Movers, I believe, with Lizzie Mack and Pip Hoyle. How did that go?
Yeah, we got back around the first of October, about a week and a half ago.
And how is it working with Pip Hoyle on that project?
Always good to work with Pip Hoyle. Amazing keyboard player, hugely creative, and eccentric. You never know what he's going to come out with. It's always something different. He's not a standard sort of barroom keyboard player. The guy's classically trained and has jazz experience, and he's always doing something out of left field.
Now, Radio Birdman, unlike a lot of the blue-collar, I guess, sweaty pub bands of the time, you guys are pretty educated. I mean, you're a GP, as is Pip Hoyle. Chris Mazuak's now a naturopath. Warwick Gilbert, an animator. So you guys aren't your typical sort of blue-collar working class band, I would guess.
Yeah, well, yeah, I suppose. Pretty educated. Chris wasn't a naturopath then. When the band started, he was a high school dropout. Warwick Gilbert's an animator, a very accomplished one, that worked for, eventually worked for Walt Disney and became a director of animated films, and a very high position in Disney. But I don't think he had formal training. Ron Keeley was an ex-Navy radio man who happened to play the drums and went to uni in New South Wales for a short time and dropped out of that. So I think the only guys that, Rob Younger never went to university. So the only guys that actually finished a degree were me and Pip. And then Chris got his homeopathic qualification much, much later.
And how did you come across Lizzie Mack, can I ask?
We were friends for quite a while before we started the band. I've known her for about, 15 years. And then we became close about 7 years ago. And after Birdman split up, at the end of 2007, we decided to do some work together because I'd been around her enough to know that she was had a great voice, and then found out that she was an excellent lyricist as well. And so it was a post-Birdman project with somebody that I was very close to and knew well.
Yeah, I was listening to the Soul Movers track Low and Slow. I couldn't help but think Lizzie Mack's voice was a little bit like Susie DiMarchi from the Baby Animals. Now, is that Deniz, is that a pretty fair comparison to make? I mean, it's a great track and a great voice.
Yeah, well, I think she likes the Baby Animals quite a bit. I think she's probably, listened to them quite a bit, and it works both ways because the Baby Animals became fans of the Soul Movers, and I was never into the Baby Animals that much myself. I didn't know that much about them, but Liz knew them really well, and I think both personally and as a fan. And so I think there's a connection there between her voice and Susie DiMarchi's.
Deniz, the Oxford Funhouse and Paddington Town Hall it's pretty much where Radio Birdman and I guess the Saints and a lot of other those kinds of groups started. What can you recall about the Oxford Funhouse days?
Well, when we started playing at the Oxford, it was because we couldn't play anywhere else. We'd been banned from everywhere in Sydney, and we'd been running our own shows for quite a while, for about the better part of a year. We'd been just running shows independently in garages and church halls and people's basements and things like that because we couldn't play anywhere. And we got to Oxford really as a stroke of luck because Lou Reed was in town and he wanted to see the band, and we didn't have anywhere to play. So we went up to the guy that ran the Oxford and and said, if you give us, if you let us play here, this came up quite suddenly. So we said, you let us play here on Saturday, Lou Reed will come. And he goes, well, okay, no problem, and so the word got out, and big crowd came, and band played. It was good, but Lou Reed, of course, doesn't come. He gets busy with something else, and he doesn't make it to the show. So, but the guy sold so much beer that he said, yeah, come back next week, and we ended up getting a residency there. He gave us, that night, he gave us $10. He said, just to show you my heart's in the right place, here's $10. That's for the whole band. But be sure to pick up all these beer cans before you go, So
that's where the Radio Birdman cult began?
Yeah, and then so that started a scene, and we kept going back up there we were playing up there every weekend for quite a long time, and it just gradually built, from, we'd have about 20 or 30 regulars, and then it just built from there. And then after they sold the place, we took over the music management of it and started booking the bands ourselves, or our management did anyway. And we dedicated the place to having bands that were like us, that were sort of outlaws from the industry and couldn't work anywhere else. We gave them, if we thought they were worthwhile, we gave them a job at the Oxford, and we would collect $1 at the door from everybody that came in, and get $20 to the girl that did the door, and another like $30 for posters, and give the rest of the money to the band. We kept nothing, and then the pub got to keep the beer, the alcohol sales. So it worked really good for a while. It was symbiotic, and like everything, nothing, doesn't last forever. It ended up becoming a violent place, and the worst elements of the punk movement and bikers and stuff like that ended up ruining it. But it was good for a while.
Yeah, so I know you're pretty passionate that you weren't a punk band. You were classified as sub-pop, and in fact pioneered the sub-pop label.
Well, we weren't punk. We weren't a punk band because when we started playing, punk didn't exist yet, and what we were doing wasn't lined up with punk that much. I mean, it was, we were either a 5 or a 6-piece band, often with keyboards. We had solos. We had fairly intricate arrangements, and so the genre didn't have all that much to do with punk. It had aggression and speed and energy, and it had a lot of attitude, but musically it wasn't punk. And we called it rock and roll. That's what we called it.